Good afternoon. This is Kim Taylor, Chair of the Fairfield Harbor Management Commission. This is our May 16, 2023 meeting. I'm in the first floor conference room at Sullivan Independence Hall with Don Hyman, Jeff Warren, Harbor Master Brian LeClaire, Consultant Jeff Stedman, Recording Secretary Betty Gabriel, and our newly appointed Deputy Harbor Master, John Dean. On the phone, I have Eric Sunman, Dave Henry. Do I have Bill Perugini or Doug Metchik?
Yes, Doug Metchik on the phone.
Great, Doug. I think that gives a 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives us a quorum. Let's call this meeting to order, and we have a flag here, so let's stand for Pledge Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, So before I go any further, I would like to congratulate John Dean, our new Deputy Harbor Master, who is with us here in the conference room this evening, and welcome.
Thank you.
And I hope you're looking forward to working with you and for you to get to know everybody who's on the commission and our voters and the public as well.
Very nice. Looking forward to it.
Great. So the first order of business this afternoon is to approve the minutes from the April 18, 2023 meeting. Could I have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Don moves. Doug or Eric, I'll need you to second.
Yeah, I'll second. This is Doug.
Thanks, okay. Doug. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Let me do the chairman's report. Right after our last meeting on April 19th, I contacted Terry Brown, the Fairfield Grants Coordinator, just to let her know of the Commission's decision not to proceed with applying for a port security grant for cameras at Yee Yacht Yard. On that same day, April 19th, I emailed Tim Bishop, Conservation Director, and the Fairfield Shellfish Commission with the language that we proposed for the Condition 5 for the license granted, for the permit granted to the developers of 1143 Sasko Hill Road for the fixed pier. On April 26th, I sent the letter to Governor Lamont recommending our 3 candidates to the harbor, to the 3 candidates for Deputy Harbor Master to the Governor. And in my note here, I omitted in the minutes here. I omitted Mr. Curtis's first name, so we'll clear that up for the minutes. On April 26th, Christopher Russo and I. Christopher Russo, who is the attorney for the developer of 1143 Sasko Hill Road, exchanged emails. He had some concerns about the language that we proposed for the Condition 5 at the 1143 Sasko Hill Road. I invited him to attend, and I see that he's just joined us here this evening, so that's good. On May 8th, Josh LaBella called, and thanks to Don Hyman to get us on the radar for the Connecticut Post. Josh wanted some information about the COP application for the lower wharf, about the plans, money, et cetera, and so I had a nice conversation with Josh, and then on the 10th, I believe, there was the article in the Connecticut Post and the Fairfield Patch. And then I thought it was a pretty good story, accurate, good story. On May 10th, Devin Santa and Alicia Midyet, and I'm probably mispronouncing her name, of Deep, exchanged question and answers about the new, the COP application for the Lower Wharf, and then 2 days later, on May 12th, I received a copy of the permit for repairs to the Lower Wharf, and I asked for a copy of that permit to be sent to Bill Hurley in the Town Engineering Department, because they were not included on the list of folks who received that, so that, and I believe that has been done. Are there any questions? Okay, no questions. Moving on to the Harbor Master's report. Mr. Leclerc.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Lots going on in the harbor. All the moorings, as I indicated last month, are now set. We had to readjust some of them with some tangles that happen all the time when you're putting moorings in, but the boats are starting to come in, and they are arriving on a daily basis. One, a rigid bottom inflatable, tried escaping, but we rounded it up 2 weekends ago before it got too far away and brought it back, and reminded its owner to work on his knot tying skills. So I didn't do that again.
Was it still in the harbor?
Yes, it was, unfortunately, the good news, it was in the harbor. Bad news is it was tangled around a floating dock. So it took a little doing to untangle it from us, but we got it free, the engine free, and nothing was cut, damaged, or broken. It's all good. The new Helix floats that were ordered have now come in, and they've been installed in the Helix area. Those are the, I call them beer keg looking floats. They're kind of like a keg shape where they're round sides but flat tops and bottoms, with a receptacle on the top to put one's bow and stern lines to keep them out of the water, and a spot to put in a pickup hole if you have one. So they've all been put in. So far, so good. We added a new Helix anchor south of South Helix 11. So South Helix 11 is the middle row furthest to the north, closest to the visiting dock at outside of Pequot. So that beefs up that row by adding a Helix to the stern. I think it's either Pearl or Emily. I think it's Pearl sits back there. We have 3 new boats into the harbor. One is on the west wall, and that's a low 20-foot in length power boat. We were able to add 2 boats to the Helix area, both sailboats, 143 feet and 146 feet. And it worked out well because of a vacancy in the Helix area, as well as one of those boats going over the Pequot dock that freed up the spots. So one of the boats came out of the north anchorage because his name came up for a spot. The second boat was on the waiting list, a few down, because he was the first sailboat and the largest boat. We were lucky to get 2 large boats in this year, and they're both happy. And we had to move a few people around. I think I ended up moving 3 or 4 boats around to and from, to make the moorings fit better, because those are bigger boats. So, I have the right to adjust boats. So it was just a matter of moving them a few in either location to make the boats fit where we put them better, and everyone is happy with that. Perry Green. I did speak to Justin Cathcart, and he branded up his flagpole at Parks, and they do not want us to handle the issuance of mooring permits as we offered for the town moorings at Perry Green. So as you know, at Perry Green, we talked about this last time, let me get my notes out on that. There are, we have 4 boats that we, being the Harbor Management, you being the Harbor Management Commission, have assigned at Perry Green. Those happen to be the 4 boats furthest to the north, closest to the yacht club direction-wise. After that, there are 3 boats that have been assigned by the town to boaters off of their list. There are then 2 boats, 2 spots where no one has been assigned that are town assignments available, and no one was assigned last year. They haven't assigned anyone yet this year to those spots. Then there is a harbor master spot for a bigger harbor master or other police vessel, and the conservation boat. So we had suggested, as you know, that the commission, and we use our software to handle administration of those, and they've declined that request. We have a flare day coming up this Saturday at 10 a.m. to noon at the Lower Wharf. So far, I've got a bin of several hundred flares that have been donated for us to explode and shoot. It's a good opportunity, a flare day. As you know, most boaters have never shot their flare guns and have never used a smoke flare or a handheld flare. This is an opportunity for them, number one, to safely get rid of the old flares that we all accumulate in our boat bilges years after they expire or the garages, and number two, to come on out and shoot a couple of flares, see what it's like, and see how high a flare really goes so that you have an understanding before you start using your flares that you can't always see them as far as you can. You know, you need to have a boat in sight before you start shooting flares. It's not like a scene on the Titanic movie where you're shooting up fireworks that you see, you know, miles. You know, the biggest ones we have are bigger than most of us would have on our boats, and they only go up, I think it's 1,200 feet. And there's a warning on them. While you can see at 40 miles, don't shoot them if you can't see another boat, because they may never see you. You know? So it's a good learning experience for boaters, how to use a handheld and all that. So I have to thank Don Hyman. He's done a great job with publicity for this. That he's written some wonderful press releases on our new deputy, on the Lower Wharf issue, the permitting, and Flare Day as well. That's been picked up by the media outlets, the various papers. So there's been some good interest, and we publicize it like our other events through the online mooring to all of the harbor constituents, people in the North Anchorage, docked vessels, waiting list, and current slip holders. Risk management, the assistant risk manager contacted me yesterday. He wanted to chat a little bit about Lower Wharf and some signage that he's working on. He told me, you know, he'd be getting back to me, and then the commission to, nothing to present yet. He had some ideas, but he wanted just to introduce himself. It was an introductory call because he understood that I had been requesting some signs for down there. So that'll be coming that we can talk about as a commission. We've been out on the weekends with the warm weather and reminding folks, particularly the kayakers and the stand-up paddle boarders, that they need their life jackets, their PFDs, not just with them but on this time of year, because the water's very cold, and as you know, you can have hypothermia pretty quick if you fall off and go in, which could disable you mentally and prevent you from being able to respond appropriately. The good news is our friends who used to swim in the channel are not swimming on the warm day. They got a stand-up paddleboard instead, and we're paddling around. We had a very nice chat because they did not have their life jackets at first. So I'm like, guys, they said, we brought our life jackets. We knew you'd want them, but we brought them. And they showed me a big bag of them on shore. So we discussed that's a step in the right direction. But they were great. And after that, they put their life jackets on. When they went out, they were taking turns paddling on, but they were wearing their jackets. I watched them the rest of the day. So it's good. It's a learning experience. So it's just a friendly reminder to them. And last, we have, as you probably know, the Blessing of the Fleet and the parade on June 17th, a Saturday. The 11 a.m. is the kickoff of the parade. The Blessing of the Fleet usually is around noon, a few minutes on either side of noon. We'll be firing the cannon again and organizing, like we did last year, the vessels, so we can try to have an orderly procession out with clear drive lines so no one gets in the way of each other. That's what's been going on down the harbor.
Should we, I mean, this online mooring is so great to get in touch with everybody who's got a permit or who's on the waiting list, but how about community sailing? I mean, we don't have a way to, sort of a routine way to get in touch with them.
I sometimes forward, like I forwarded the Flare Day news release and other news releases to Robert Claiborne, the president.
Right.
Sometimes he has forwarded that on to the members, and sometimes he hasn't. So I do that.
Okay.
You can send me his email. This way I can send him things that I may want to discuss with him, warning him about hazards in the harbor or things coming up. So he knows, for instance, they may not know about the parade. And if he doesn't, just to let his people know that it's not a good day to sail out from 10 to 12.
Yeah.
That would be a good thing for you, coming from you rather than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And we carry flares on the boats. I don't think they're guns though, ejection guns, but we carry flares. They're probably 1 million years old.
So they should.
Yeah.
Okay.
Email. We invite him to this. So that's,
Good.
and I asked Justin to invite the South Benson people, and he indicated that the newsletter had gone out already, his latest newsletter. So I suggested that perhaps he just do another blast telling them about that. And Bill Perugini is coordinating with the Coast Guard Auxiliary I spoke to the U.S. Coast Guard, and they're fine. They'll be doing the marine announcement to all mariners before from them. The police are coming down on their boat as well.
Great. And the fire department? Have we
I
heard
don't
from
know
them?
if they're coming or not.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for the harbor master? Jeff?
This is Doug. Just a quick question. Could you just repeat when the blessing of the fleet is?
I'm sorry, yes, it's June 17th, Saturday. The parade is at 11 o'clock. Pancake breakfast is obviously before that at Southport School, and the blessing is just around noon on the 17th.
Great. Thank you so much.
Jeff Stedman, go ahead.
The boats that are assigned by the town at Perry Green, they have anchors that are in the harbor for their stern. Do you give a permit for those? I mean, does the town assign the spot and then they still have to get a permit to put the anchor in?
How it was explained to me when I started, because this is my second full summer with dealing with their moorings, we have, essentially conservation is in there. There are 3 spots that are no longer actually there because of shallow water rounding the corner, as you know, heading over, around the little corner to the south. The harbor master spot, which remains empty, and of their 5 spots, they just tell me who is there and send me copies of the paperwork, and there's a portion of the fee that comes to us. We put the stern moorings in for those vessels. For the town...
But do you give a permit for the placement of those moorings? Even though you're not assigning who goes on them, the town is, because...
Essentially we are, because essentially I have the information. So essentially they don't apply for a permit through online mooring, but I just have the information on the 3 vessels that are there to know whose boats those are.
But does the town need a permit to put the anchor in because it's deep property?
Well, we put those anchors.
But
Do we need does somebody?
Oh, you mean a deep permit?
no,
Yeah.
not a deep
Oh.
permit, because the state statute says no mooring can be placed in the harbor without a permit from the harbor master.
Correct.
But the Perry Green moorings are special because of the deed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's understood that those are assigned, or certain ones, by Parks and Rec. I was just wondering whether the stern moorings actually get a permit from you, even though you don't determine who.
Yeah, essentially yes, because we
Well,
have,
that's the
yes,
answer then.
because we know how many there are and where they are, and I coordinate where they get put. Right.
And then I talked with Mr. Sternberg again today, who's still trying to complete the permit application for the replacement of the bulkhead. And he wondered if I said there's going to be a meeting this afternoon. But is he all squared away? I said it was really up to you as to how they should identify the number of moorings that are there, and should we try not to be so precise, or
We know that,
we need to ask them to identify the boats that are there.
that's something we talked about. I thought we were talking about under new business. We could talk about it now, because it's an issue. It's an issue for discussion, because the old drawings show the 14 spots.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, so maybe we should just back up and get everybody on the same
Maybe,
page.
yeah.
So the town has applied to DEEP for a COP application, Certificate of Permission application, to repair the bulkhead at Perry Green. And it's a certificate of permission because the work has already been done and they're just simply asking to fix up what's there. And one of the questions that's arisen is, in the drawings that Race is doing for the town, is how many moorings are along the Perry Green bulkhead?
So they had a drawing from June of 2012, revised to 2015. This is the Race set of drawings we have. They show 1 through 14 along Perry Green,
Right.
except there is no number 2. It goes 1, 3, 4 along here. And for the folks on the phone, I'm pointing to the small portion of the green to the south. It goes 1, 2, 4, and then you're coming around the corner, you get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. But if you look at what is actually out there,
This is an old photo.
okay, so right now there's a floating, this is the Whaler dock right here that I'm pointing to. That's a yacht club permitted dock, which isn't in place yet. So if you look out there, unless they put it in the last few days, it's not there yet. Then you're going to see 4 boats in a row here. Those are the ones assigned by me. And right now we have an 18-foot power boat, a 25-foot sailboat, an 18-foot sailboat, and a 22-foot power boat. And how those are rigged, there's a stern line, assuming you bow into the bulkhead, there's a stern line to a mooring on all of them, a tracer line, just like these lines you see on the west wall and the other wall, with floats running to another float off the bow, which holds a line that goes in and ties up at the bottom of the wall for security. There's no bow anchor there. So you're kind of tied to the stern with a second line going to the wall. And this is the wall, as Jeff will talk about, it's just rotting and falling apart. So they're hooked to the bottom of it in different configurations. After that, there are 5 available for what we call town boats. Those town boats, they've only had 3 of them in last year. They weren't able to fill all of them for whatever reason. And that's why we suggested perhaps we do, because we have some small power boats who may want to be there. They're tough locations to have a boat, given this turns to mud at low tide. But if you have a shallow draft boat, you can make it work. And again, this is the red one. This is Aw Shucks, the Town Conservation Commission. And there's 1 extra spot next to it for what they call the Harbor Master spot, for the Harbor Master.
Shellfish Commission, yeah. It's actually the Shellfish Commission.
What did I say?
What did you say?
You said Conservation.
I'm sorry, Shellfish Commission, yes.
Shellfish, yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. The Shellfish Commission's boat.
It's not clear why Deep wants this information.
Oh, so that's my point. Thank you. That's my point, yeah.
Existing conditions, but do we want to be?
So that's what I wanted to ask you about, yeah.
Change things.
So here's the thing, is we had 14 at one point, then we went down to 13. Now we have 11. So the thing is, the thought I floated out there, no pun intended, if we show 11 on the permit, at some point, if this was ever dredged, for whatever reason, we have 11. We don't have more. We can't just add more, is my understanding. We want to ask for
6 days, and
Hello?
is going to a concert.
Hello.
Someone didn't mute.
Somebody didn't mute. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Devin Sant. I just called in.
No.
Okay.
So the thing is, if we ask, hi Devin, if we ask for
Hey.
only what's out there, 11, and in the future at some point, for whatever reason, it's dredged in there, we now have our hands tied. Do we want to ask for the 14 and then just not put them all in? And that's where I leave it. I don't know the answer to that
But I
from
don't
you
think
guys.
we're asking for anything.
We're just telling them what's there.
We're just telling them what's there.
So do we want to tell them?
We're not asking
that
them to
we have
approve the attachment of the boats to the.
We have plans for 14 and the ability for 14 or 13. We just don't happen to have that many boats there.
Well, actually,
I don't know
Devin is on the phone now.
Devin?
Devin?
Yes.
Hey,
Yeah,
Brian.
sorry I can't be there in person today. It's my daughter's birthday today, so I got birthday
Devin,
plans.
we're talking about Terry Green and how if you look at the race plan from 2012, it shows 14 numbered spots, but there is no number 2, so there's really 13. So at one point there were 14. By 2012 or 15 there were 13. Now there's 11. So the question is, I guess Deep is inquiring through Jeff Stedman is here. How many do we want to?
They inquired of Steve and Devin.
Yeah.
As part of their.
Yeah, with the Perry Green
Right. So that's the
application.
question.
So what's the best way to address that, Devin? I mean, we're not asking for permission to put the moorings there. It's more like, are we? It's more like that's an existing condition. But we're not asking for approval from Deep as to how many mooring locations can be there.
Yeah, I'd assume just separate those. That the harbor master would put in. I guess there's probably some amount that was authorized at some point. Do we know the regulatory history? Do we know whether there was 14 authorized?
I mean, couldn't you just have a declarative sentence? The bulkhead has 14 mooring allocations.
They wanted it on a drawing, on the permit application.
Well, that's another interesting thing because Devin, as you know, I've looked at your drawing, the recent one you sent over, May 8th, 2023. It's sheet 12 of 12.
Okay.
That's the existing mooring plan. So do they want, because the way they're shown on that, you may wonder, why are they all clumped up like they're clumped up? And the reason is if you look at that drawing, off the bow of 8, so basically between 7 and 9, there's a big vegetated section of some kind of grasses or bushes there, and behind it, instead of a nice concrete wall, there's a rotted old, it looks like metal, some kind of a wall like that. So I'm sure over time, instead of running the lines nice and straight, they all got bunched into this direction like this, as opposed to where they should have, because you can't tie them or affix them there, a combination of the bushes and the wall rotting away. So is that how we, Devin, do we want to show them like you have them, or should we show them like they should be, not how they've been moved over time?
We could show them in the proposed case. I mean, I suppose here's one approach. We show them in the proposed case as shown 14, and note here are the authorized, approximate location of 14 authorized wall moorings, however it's referred to in the HMP, and say final location and quantity to be determined at harbor master's discretion or something.
That would be perfect, Devin.
Because that's the intent, and that would be.
I like that.
Desired number.
And then when the wall gets built, it may be built in a way that we can now fix them a little bit differently in a better way, instead of just there's no rot and decay, which has the boat safely. I like that.
So, but we don't know where the number 14 came from.
All I know is
that we need some help with.
2012 plan, it goes 1 to 14, but one's missing, and anecdotally I've told that was removed years ago. So I don't know if there were more than 14. I don't know.
For the conservation.
And those plans that we produced back then, they weren't really based on survey. They were based on, I mean, water depths are surveyed, but mooring locations were more. It was more of a schematic of what might be there. So I wouldn't get too hung up on those locations. That was probably just sketched between Jeff and myself in the office of here's what was in the past and here's about where they are.
Yeah, subject to change over time. Based on water depths and
Sure.
But
If you look at every other mooring in the harbor, it gets pulled out and replaced. It's not always in the exact same place. It's
right.
Yeah, and it's not up to deep to permit these locations.
Right.
So it's just a description of existing conditions.
Yeah. So, but I think the only thing that kind of where deep would come in and where the plan would come in is making sure we show the proper quantity. And again, I would just suggest we show the maximum quantity and say, again, at harbor master discretion.
Yeah.
But determining what that maximum quantity is. I don't know what that is.
14?
14 is probably a good number for there. Looking at them, I mean, they're pretty tight now. 14 would let me come around the corner if appropriate at some point.
Right.
Maybe at some point we do. If there's some very small boat that wants to be out there for whatever reason, there might be a spot for it. We could just throw another anchor, a mushroom in there. That would be perfect for certain people. And that's where the new helix is, by the way. It's on the stern of this boat, middle row. I was trying to explain that to you. The 3 rows of the helix is at the stern.
So, Commissioners, any questions? I know this kind of got arcane fast, but.
Jeff and I are interested in this, and Devin.
I talked with Steve today, Devin, and told him that we were going to discuss this at the meeting today. He was still looking for some guidance as to how many to show.
Yeah. I think if you could find out if there is any basis for the number.
I'll go look what we put in the
otherwise, I'd suggest we just show the 13 or 14, which is shown before.
So Devin, Jeff has offered to go look in the harbor management plan to see what
was there a number of years ago.
What was there in 1990, whatever. Five.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe it's fully on the harbor master's discretion for even the overall quantity. Right. Maybe it states that in there too.
Okay. So, any questions for the harbor master about his report? Any questions to the harbor master and Jeff about the Perry Green bulkhead application for the town? Okay, moving right along. Lower Wharf. Do we have anything? We had the wonderful story in the Connecticut Post.
We also have the approval now.
We have the approval as of Friday.
Yeah, so that's to credit to Ray's getting that approval.
Yes, and thank you, Ray.
for us.
Yes.
No, thanks for the opportunity. I don't know if I can speak now, but I just wanted to go over a few things on that authorization.
Yeah,
Okay.
The questions, yeah, maybe you can explain it, because when we looked at the authorization, Devin, it didn't seem to specifically reference the walkway that goes from the top of the wall to the piers. Is that,
Okay.
something that has to be added, or is that understood, or not need a permit? And then the way it was authorized, it was, I don't have it right in front of me, it talked about replacement of the existing pier. And then I assume that meant the whole, both the north and the south, because it authorized 14 pilings, and the 14 pilings were, you know, for both of them.
I don't know if the 14 pilings are for both of them. We got a lot of turnover with the state. We have a lot of new people, and this was. I was surprised I wasn't asked how many deck screws were going to be used. So it was a lot of back and a lot of questions and a lot. I've never seen a project this so relatively simple, sliced and diced so finely by the regulators. The pier itself, I mean, if you look at our plans, it's existing 50-foot by 6.5 L head to be reconstructed within existing footprint of existing pier, along with 4 by 14.5 foot access walkway. That's on our drawing.
But the authorized activities, number one is replace a timber pier by removing the existing structure and installing 14 piles, and then installing the pile caps and so forth. And when they talk about authorized to replace a timber pier, so the question we have, Devin, does that then encompass both of the north and south structures?
No, it doesn't. And again, I would refer you to the drawings where a lot of clarity was made. I don't know why. I don't know why Alicia went so in detail on the nut and bolt level and writing this description out versus just referencing the drawings. I mean, it references the drawings. The first sentence is, and as depicted on site plan sheets cited herein. If you look at the existing proposed plan, which is sheet 4 of 8, it just shows what's shaded as the existing 50 by 6.5 foot L head being reconstructed. We didn't do anything with the piles to the north. We have correspondence with DEEP inquiring about the structure to the north, and we said we're just not doing anything with that. We had in our past, in one of the earlier renditions, we noted to retain the piles. They said they didn't need to be retained because they were otherwise authorized.
So when it says replace a timber pier as an authorized activity, that applies to the. I recognize that they're saying as depicted on any site plans sheets that are in the application, but do we have to get a clarification of some sort that we have authorization to redo both of those?
Well, you don't have authorization for the the walkway out and the pier to the south are authorized.
But not the north.
But not work on the north?
Not work on the north, right?
Yeah. Yep,
Because
correct.
I thought we decided when
all right.
Devin was here,
All right.
that we were not, there was a lot of community involvement and a lot of, the need for a lot of community involvement and decision-making on what was to be done on the northern pier. And that but at this time, we're so concerned about the safety of the southern pier, and this was before the storm, the safety of the southern pier, that we were going to simply proceed with the southern pier, the wall, and around the I don't know what you call the first foot inside the wall.
But as far as doing the work, that's the way we would proceed. But I thought we wanted to get the approval to do,
No, we didn't authorize, no, we specifically did not authorize it, Jeff, because we had a conversation a while back about, do we just authorize everything? Do we authorize the full T-head? Do we authorize replacement of the entire wall? And then said, well, if we're not gonna build these things, both of those could be somewhat controversial in terms of scope and scale of the project.
Right.
And could cause perhaps undue concern of the scope and scale. So we made a decision. We have to look back at the minutes of what meeting it was, but this is my recollection of that meeting. And
That's my recollection
It
too,
was in
yeah.
November.
Was it
Yeah,
November?
and the decision was,
I thought we were not
the
going to.
decision was made to go with a project that very closely aligned with what we thought was going to be actionable in the very near future, recognizing if we wanted to go back and extend the L head to the north and turn it into a T head, that'd be done at a later date as part of a different
Yeah.
I remember Jeff bringing this point up at that meeting and saying, give us that kind of wiggle room for the future.
Because our estimate for
But I don't remember how it was resolved.
the estimate for the total cost of the work, the $800,000, for which the 20% cost share was authorized, that's for the entire project, right? For both the north and the south.
Well, the piers themselves, I thought, were about $250,000, with the balance of the $800,000 going towards the work on the wall.
Yeah, but I think Race's estimate for the project cost that Mr. Sternberg put
Right,
together for
right.
us was for both replacing or redoing both the north and the south
Well, that I
piers.
don't know.
And that's what we were pursuing with the
With the
hopefully with a grant to the Port Authority. That's an interesting question though, because if we don't get it doesn't give us the option now of.
Yeah, I have it right here. It's in the minutes in November. May I, Madam Chairman?
Yeah.
These are the minutes I found from online from the November 15th, 2022 meeting, Lower Wharf Project. Mr. Stedman reported that Race is currently preparing the application, materials, and documents for submittal to DEEP for approval to repair the elevated piers and seawall. Because there will be no dredging, the unused Connecticut Port Authority ship grant to dredge in the area from the boat launching ramp to the lower wharf will be returned to the Port Authority minus the town's expenses. A formal request from the Port Authority will be issued for a return of the grant. Following inquiry by Mr. LeClaire about whether the pilings supporting the elevated piers will need to be replaced, Devin Santa reported that the pilings will be replaced and that Race has conducted a recent site inspection and has determined that the pilings currently are in poor condition and there may be a safety risk. Mr. Santa inquired whether the HMC wished to apply for a T-head or an L-head pier configuration. It was the consensus of the HMC to include this matter on the December meeting agenda for further discussion.
Yeah, I have the vote for December.
I was going to go to December. Yeah, want me to call the minutes?
The vote.
I can call the minutes up.
Yep.
Yeah, if you want me to. Okay, let's go to December then. Okay, so that's December 20 of 2022. That May. Lower Wharf Project. Here we go. Handouts. Number. Photos of the wall. Photos of the piers. The original T-head configuration of the piers was discussed. Mr. Santa noted that the decking had been removed from the south pier and replaced several years ago. The HMC discussed the condition of the concrete cap on the seawall, noting that it also should be replaced due to the deteriorating condition. Mr. Cargill noted that he has been in communication with Town Risk Manager Peter Ritchie to schedule a site visit and suggested the HDC and other local groups be consulted if changes to the property are proposed, including any changes to the piers. The consensus was that it is a priority at this time to ensure that the existing pier structures are safe for public access and to take appropriate action if it is determined otherwise by the town. Following the site conditions report by Mr. Santa and significant discussion by the HMC, it was the consensus of the HMC to seek deep approval through a Certificate of Permission, COP, for the repair replacement of the entire pier structure, replacement of the seawall cap, repair of sinkholes around the wall, and repair of the southern end of the seawall. Perugini moved, Hirschler seconded, that the agency addressed the four areas at the lower wharf discussed this evening if raised to seek a COP for D unanimously. Yes. That's my recollection as well.
Okay.
Mr. Jeffs.
It was not my recollection, though the minutes document it fairly clearly to the contrary. But that's not what we applied for.
Okay, we can.
So why can't we just amend it?
Yeah. Jeff is saying, Devin, he's asking you, could it be amended?
Well, it's a COP. It's not a it's not like we've got a draft public notice here in front of us.
Let's do a second COP for them.
We could do a second COP.
Yeah, but we had a discussion about not pursuing the construction of that right away.
Well, right.
Yeah, I mean,
But the discussion was that we wanted to at least have the flexibility in the future to not eliminate eliminate that.
Right.
And that's
Right.
that's what we.
My recollection, again, my recollection of that, though not fully reflected in the minutes, but reflected in everything that we produced following that meeting, was we were going to do that by leaving the piles in place.
Right.
So that's all the drawings that we produced, that drafts were submitted to the commission, showed the L head being reconstructed. And nothing, no work to the northern section. Again, I recognize that's contrary to what the minutes say, but it's what I had understood and what we produced.
So, be that as it may, what do you think? What do you think would I mean, how complicated is it to proceed? I mean, we don't have the money. We have the permission to do some work, but we don't have the money. And the Connecticut Port Authority is not in the grant giving business, and it's probably work that can't get done till next winter anyway, under the best of circumstances. So, I mean, it seems to me one option would be simply to go back and say to DEEP, we need permission to do something on the northern pier.
Yeah, we could apply for a COP for that, but I don't know whether I still don't know whether you're doing that or not.
Right. Well, I agree. I don't know that we
just want to keep the door open to doing it if and when the time comes, the money comes, the will comes to do that.
But I guess one of the questions is the door, does it matter whether we do it now or wait till we see about whether or not we can proceed with any of this with the money?
Yeah, that's the question. Do you have to have it spelled out now, or can you just leave the piers there and come back to it in the future?
Well,
It's deep.
There's no difference whether it was authorized now or authorized in the future. It's
and that's an excellent question that I was going to ask as well about leaving the pier there, something that I brought up at one of the past meetings. We obviously, members of the public obviously cannot fish from the pier right now. It's number one, there's no way to get there. Number two, even if one did get themselves on it, it's not safe, as Devin indicated, and we've seen when we've checked it out from walking around it with the chairman and by boat with Jack and some other folks, it's rotted, those pilings are rotting away and the cross pieces are loose. Are we able to, and should we, remove it now and take off that pier, take off the top of the pier, and perhaps cut the pilings at ground level or close? I've got an extra buoy that could be put there, a danger buoy, to keep boats from straying in that area. The thought being, fishermen can't cast over that, obviously, to fish from that area. Do we want to take it out so fishermen and women can fish from there? And that's just a thought I want to, we started talking about that. We said, well, before we take anything away, let's let Devin get a COP before we eliminate what we want to replace. And now, I don't know if Jeff or Devin know the answer to that. Can we, if there's resources of the town with a bucket loader or backhoe or whatever, to take the thing out in pieces like they did the ramp?
Well,
I don't know.
You have authorization. You have a COP right now that has a 5-year lifespan for the work associated, and some of that work associated is demo, and some of that work associated is construction.
Okay.
So yeah, you can, with proper notification, you need to notify DEEP before you start. You can notify DEEP and start the demo.
But if we were to take that out, would we then not be able to put it back unless we got a permit? You know what I mean?
No, what I'm saying is you have a permit.
We just got,
We have the
Well,
two.
I'm thinking of the northern pier now. Is that what you're talking about?
No,
I'm
we're
talking
talking
No,
about
we're
the
talking about the southern section.
Southern pier, because we have to get a COP on the northern, but for the southern, I'm just throwing that out there, do we want to have it taken down if we could?
I have another concern. When the pier, the southerly pier was being used, a lot of people I saw were leaning up against the rail as they were, after they would pull in their lines or cast or just
Sure.
relaxing up there. If we remove all that wood and superstructure and invite people to effectively cast from the bulkhead, there's no railing. And it's, to me, makes it easier to fall in. And if, you know, it creates a safety risk to my mind.
Is it leaning because, do they lean because that's just, you get your pole and you want to lean and
Yeah,
your
they lean.
beverage next to you, and if there's a railing, you'll sit with your feet over the edge like I don't know how, I'm
Well, I
not,
mean, sure you can.
I don't know what.
People have been fishing off piers without railings
Docks for years.
since there've been fish. But, I mean, from a safety point of
And
view,
when they're fishing now off the floating dock, they're fishing off the metal dock.
Absolutely
Like
they
down,
are.
because people want to fish, and I get it, and, I haven't been chasing them out if there's no boats, they're getting in the way, and they've been good when boats come in. I get they want to fish somewhere.
But the pier, as it exists now, is also dangerous.
If someone, I'm afraid.
I mean, somebody's gonna climb out there and try and get on it, and,
I'm afraid the kids are gonna go down and climb up,
Yep.
and rig up a huck fin
Yep.
ladder, or a
Yep.
2x8
yeah,
plank, or a paddle board,
yeah.
or right across the top and start climbing out there, a kayak.
And I think if you remove guardrails or railings, you're adding to the risk.
But is the risk manager now looking at this for the purpose of giving direction as to what we should do?
I can have that
I believe-
discussion, we should have that discussion,
Well,
you should have that discussion.
Later on in the agenda, Sam and Eric have been trying to have that discussion. And I believe that with the risk manager, and I believe that the risk manager has indicated what we already know, which is that the RTM has passed the plans, but we're all waiting on Connecticut Port Authority for money. There's no money. Everybody agrees that the repairs that are now authorized by DEEP should be done, and that's a good idea, but nobody is ponying up anywhere, any kind of money to get any of that work done. So, I mean, everybody's on the same page. The pier needs to A, be repaired, or B, go, but we don't have any money unless we, the Harbor Commission, one thought, dig into our own account.
Or ask the town, just like they removed the plank, if they, when they have the time, could send a backhoe out there with a couple of sawzalls and just take it out in a couple of chunks into a dump truck, just cut, slap. It's simple. It's a lot easier taking it out than building it,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, one thing is be careful of, you might trade a fishing hazard for a navigation hazard.
Yeah, if you don't pull them all the way out, Devin, I mean, is that?
If you don't pull them all the way out, yeah, it's gonna be harder to see, and at high tide, the tops of the piles might barely be above water. So just some consideration, if you do pull them out, you're not trading one hazard for another.
But at low tide, you can get to the most channelward, seaward
Yeah.
islands. You could
Yeah.
walk around, so someone with a chainsaw could cut them at ground level.
Right. So Devin, if somebody, if sort of the generally accepted way to do this is to pull the pilings out, or do they
Correct.
cut them off? They pull them out.
Pull them.
Or do we leave the pilings and take the top structure off?
Yeah, I think,
And
I mean,
let
that-
people fish between them, like,
yeah, that would be,
no cross pieces. Take the cross pieces out, leave 6 or so pilings, and folks can at least cast between them, I guess.
they're gonna do that, yeah.
I'm just trying to think if you...
Like they might have at the Northerly Pier.
I think it's a big attractive nuisance right now.
I
Every time
totally
I go
agree.
by, waiting for the warm weather, we
Yeah.
know people are gonna get on that thing.
Yeah.
That's really dangerous, because it may collapse. That's why it's dangerous. It's not just there's no ramp. The thing is not structurally safe. And if it collapses and it hits the water and it floats in and it hits the boats, it's, not only the people, it's property damage we have to worry about.
The risk manager talked to Bill Hurley, the town engineer,
Oh, okay.
about some of this, and Bill asked me to send some of the background material. So we know that they're
Oh, yeah.
looking at this.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps we alert the risk manager to this discussion that we're having now and our concerns, and ask him or her, I don't know who it is, to factor this in.
I can talk to Mr. Hurley tomorrow and tell him about our discussion and see what additional information might be helpful.
Yeah.
Well, who would we have to go to in the town to ask for help with dismantling? Public Works?
Public Works, right.
That's who I asked about the piece to be taken off. They did a wonderful job. They got out there within a week in December with a backhoe and some gentlemen. And it may not be that big a job to take it off, with the right equipment. Just reaching over and hoisting it, I don't know, in small pieces. It's not that big.
Yeah, again, the only thing I just make sure with the piles, you'd want those piles extracted fully, so you probably don't want them cut down with a chainsaw, such that a marine contractor, eventually they have a crane there, can pull them out.
So they put a chain around them with a crane, Devin, and lift them straight up, basically?
That's what they'll eventually do, yeah. But that's probably, they might, maybe not that deep, and maybe the town can do it if they get an excavator there. Or maybe you end up taking some 2x6s and painting them orange and bolting them to the top of the piles to extend a few of those outer piles up a bit. If the deck is removed, the piles are only going to be a foot or so above high water, and not very visible.
Yeah.
We do have a buoy, though, to mark, which I looked at
So,
already.
if we remove the footing, the deck, but leave the piles, what's wrong with that? And then you've eliminated the chance that someone could climb up on it and jump off.
Well, I think what
Someone-
Kevin is saying, that you might not be able to see the piles.
No, I'm not saying cut the piles.
No, that's what, I think that's
We
what
can wrap
Kevin is
them
saying.
if we have to. We can wrap them with the
What you would have to-
reflector tape, and we could stick a buoy. I could stick a buoy there.
Yeah, as long as there's some consideration, because I think
Yeah,
it might be a little harder to see than we would think without some further intervention.
Yeah, I mean, the Hudson River and the East River in New York City have piles up all over the place, with no decking.
Right. Right. Right, so we should, you're gonna talk to Bill Hurley tomorrow
Yes.
about that? Okay, so maybe Bill Hurley can put us in touch with, have some ideas
He
about
just called me.
public works?
The assistant risk manager, too, called me yesterday. Like I said, I'd call him up tomorrow.
Well, but my understanding is that he doesn't know as much as, all he knows is that the town has okayed removal of the pier,
Okay.
and that we're waiting for a grant in order to do that.
Bill can connect you with Public Works.
Yeah,
See if that can be
yeah,
done.
that's, I think that's a better route. And as for the work on the northern end of the pier,
Yeah.
I mean, what do commissioners want to do?
If it's necessary to amend the application to spell out that we want to keep this option open and just have a sentence or two that,
I think it's the second COP Devin is saying. We just do it. Aren't you, Devin?
Yeah, it'd be one thing if this was a full permit where there was a draft notice. This is the COP.
We got it already. Just do another end.
So it'd be going through the COP process again. Obviously simpler. It's just that one bit of wall. Bit of wharf.
Is there a cost factor from revising the application?
Makes sense.
Yeah, well,
He says amend, get another one.
But
To
we
me,
need,
it makes sense to keep the options open for our successors, frankly, down the road. This is not
Right,
gonna happen
yeah, it's probably not something
anytime
good
soon.
Well,
But
the option is only in the lifespan of the COP.
for 5 years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So in 5 years, we're gonna have to go through it all again anyway.
I guess if it was this easy to get a
Well-
COP, is there
90 days?
a reason
Well,
not to get a COP?
the issue when we talked with Mr. Salvatore from the Port Authority on the site, and he advised us to apply for the funds to redo the whole wall.
Okay.
And to get an up-to-date estimate, which we did from Race, in order to get that $800,000 estimate. And in order to be able to, we thought we were gonna apply for the money right away, which didn't work out. But in order to use that money, we have to have the approval, in place to
Right, we
do
need,
the work we're asking for the money to do. So I don't know when the next, Port Authority grant might be, but they said it's not gonna be this year, it'll be hopefully next year. But, no,
right, so,
you want a motion to amend the,
well, I think we need to think about, I mean,
we need a cost estimate from Race too, to do a separate.
we need a cost estimate from Race to have a new COP for the northern pier. We need to, I mean, we don't know when the grant money is next gonna be available from the Connecticut Port Authority. So, I mean, the only thing that's gonna happen immediately is that we're gonna find out from Public Works and the engineering department whether or not we can do something to that structure. So, I mean, and as you said, Don, this is really something that's gonna happen in the future, not in the next year or so. And so, all of you are gonna have to make a decision about whether or not to proceed and how to proceed at some point, because, you know, no work is gonna be done, as far as I can see, until even next year at this point.
so, last time, Devin, do you think we need to do this as a placeholder for the future? I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about.
We don't wanna take the pilings out there from.
No.
of the north pier, 'cause then
Yeah,
we're not-
again, that's-
No,
And he's not recommending that.
No, we'd left them in, and again, I apologize for any misunderstanding, and again, I do see the minutes are
Well, you're not
clear,
alone in
but
that,
that wasn't
Devin.
that wasn't my recollection, and that wasn't the drawings we prepared that were reviewed, so I don't know if there's no intention of doing it. And again, this was the discussions that I recall having, that if there was no intention of doing it, we didn't want to raise potential flags of someone saying my site's going to be impacted or this is going to materially change. So that was my recollection of how we got to where we got to. We have a situation where we have a past permit for the reconstruction of the full wharf. That permit is lapsed. We went through a COP process to go through and get what we got. I'd have to look back at my recollection, my discussions with Sue Jacobson early on was that she was going to allow us to go through a COP process for either the full, the T head, or just the L head, while we're still in discussions of how much we were going to do. So I think at any point in the future that the town could get that if the need is determined to be there, that this says, okay, this is a public access facility that serves the community at large. And whether that's through a COP process or a full permit process, I believe it would be authorized, provided it doesn't meet much opposition.
So Devin,
I don't know that we were so much worried about opposition because it was replacing something that was there. I think the concern was having the money to do everything.
Well, again, the conversations that I recall having was, do we throw everything in the kitchen sink at the COP? Because we could have authorized the full seawall repair. And we said, no, well, if we did the full seawall repair, we'd have to show in the COP application how much stockpile material would be needed, how long the job would need to be, and we said that might not be, if we're not going to intend to do all that, if that would cause concerns, let's tailor it to what we intend to do.
right. And we talked about the northern pier as getting community involvement about whether they wanted the pilings to go or whether they wanted the pier to be extended and making an effort to get more involvement in the decision than just us sitting around the table. So maybe, Devin, the thing to do is for you to look back with your conversations with Sue and to give us if you can in the next couple of months, a cost estimate of what a COP for the northern pier would be. You know, we can proceed with the Public Works and maybe even the Connecticut Port Authority. You know, do we need would they be any less willing to give us money because we don't have the northern pier included in our immediate plans?
Yeah, I'll make the inquiries to the state. And
the estimate we had from Race was $787,000 for the whole project.
Right.
And that include the access way and the south pier, which was $232,000.
Right.
And the area north of the access way with drilled piles, that was $220,000. And then the seawall work was $160,000.
Oh, I'm way off on my recollection.
And that's how we rounded it off to $800,000 with
right.
a 20% cost share.
But the seawall work changed significantly.
Right.
Where we looked at full replacement to the south. I think some of this happened too, Jeff. We were looking at the seawall for replacement, not just chinking and stone replacement. We was like, oh, that's going to take some more cost.
But we can work all this out. The reason we got this was this estimate because we anticipated applying for a grant to the Port Authority, and the Port Authority project manager said you have to have an up-to-date cost estimate and apply for everything.
Right.
Well, I'll talk to the state about. I guess the easy ask is would they allow this as a de minimis change, which I tend to think not, but I'll ask that question.
This is a relatively...
And report back accordingly.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Thank you, Devin. That's...
No, of course. Again, apologies for any...
No, you weren't the only one. Yep.
We'll figure it out.
So, Commissioners, any questions for Devin or Jeff?
You have the next steps here. You have all the next steps.
At the next steps.
So the one thing I do want to add to that as well, though, is you do need to file in land records the last page of this application. It needs to be the original, which should be getting sent to the town of Fairfield. So you need to keep your eyes out for that.
Okay, I asked the original, Alicia sent it to me and the first select woman and Jim Harmon and the harbor master and some people at the Army Corps of Engineers, but not to, I went back and asked her to please send it to Bill Hurley. Is that where, I mean, I'm not sure who in the town would do the land records filing, I guess is my question. And I guess
it's going to be whoever gets these original copy. That one of the biggest pains in the butts of these things now is no one can do the filing other than the person that has the original. So once the original is located, it can be determined who's gonna file it.
Okay.
But that's not that big a deal, it's just going to town hall and saying, file some.
Okay, so we'll ask engineering, because
We had to do that when we did the excavation of the sand spit after Storm Sandy.
okay. So Bill will probably, okay, well, so we'll check with Bill Hurley. Okay.
Yeah, it's the licensee is the town of Fairfield, and it's being sent to 725 Old Post Road. So yeah, if Bill can keep his eyes out for that, that'd be good.
Yeah, well, I think it went up to Brenda, but I'm not sure, so.
Okay.
Okay, we'll find it. Thanks, Devin. I apologize for the confusion.
No, we'll get through this. I have
Yeah,
every confidence.
yeah. Yeah. Enjoy your daughter's birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll hang tight in case there's anything else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Russo, you're sitting over there so patiently, so why don't we, I apologize, I didn't realize Lower Wharf was gonna take so long. Let's jump down, commissioners, to item 6 under old business, revised language to condition 5 of the permit. So, as I mentioned in my report, I forwarded on to the Shellfish Commission and the Director of Conservation the proposed language from our last meeting. For those of you, okay, here I have a copy of that email, which has the original language in the permit, the new language proposed by Race, and the third item is the language that we proposed at our last meeting. And the Shellfish Commission and the Conservation Director have not responded to my email asking for their input.
Thank you.
So, but Mr. Russo, you're here.
Chair Commissioners, Chris Russo, Russo Rizzi LLC, offices at 10 Festival Road in Fairfield, here on behalf of the applicant. So we met with Shellfish Commission last week to discuss the language that had been sent over to the Shellfish Commission regarding this restriction, and explain to them what we were looking for is language that would permit a sailboat without a fixed keel and without auxiliary power. So basically, it would allow any type of sailboat with a removable or retractable center board or dagger board, like a Sunfish or a 420 or something like that. The commission indicated, they voted on it, and they indicated that they were comfortable with that. They asked me to send them proposed language. I sent that over to the chair, which is essentially just what Race had originally submitted as a request for the revision, which is at no time shall any motorized vessel, fixed keel sailing vessel, or auxiliary powered fixed keel sailing vessel be berthed at, moored at, or otherwise secured to the float authorized herein. This restriction shall not apply to human powered vessels, i.e. rowboats, canoes, kayaks, paddleboards, etc., or sail powered vessels without a fixed keel.
So basically, your position is the same as it was
Originally.
before we.
Right, and the chair had just asked for me to send language regarding that would allow sailboats without fixed keels. That would have some type of removable, practically speaking, if you had a fixed keel and you were trying to go to that dock, it would not be advisable. You would just ruin your sailboat. So unless you were into doing that, it just would seem to be counterintuitive to do that. So, the thought being that this would allow somebody with a Sunfish or a 420 to bring their boat there.
Well, I know Harbor Master had concerns about enforcement when we started talking about fixed keels and swing keels and You have any thoughts?
Well, one is obviously enforcement. You know, you can have a large boat with a swing keel or I've got a 22-foot personal sailboat with a swing keel. But even when it's swung up, it draws 2.5, 3 feet. And then 5.5 swung down. And, you know, you have 25-footers. Catalina 25s have swing keels as one of their fin, water, or swing keel, or wing is it? It's 4 keel options. And that's one thing is in enforcement. And the second, though, it's just something I just thought of. If you're, you know, you had a lot of discussion about disturbance to the shellfish beds. And that's
Right.
one of the things why you sent it back to shellfish. Yeah, anybody who's ever sailed a sunfish knows what it's like to sail with a dagger board up. It doesn't go where it's pointed, it goes exactly sideways because it needs that resistance, the whole principle of sailing. So I get it having a sunfish coming in there, but is it really going to come in with the board up? Probably not. It's going to come with the board down until it bumps and then jiggle it up.
Then you jiggle it up.
And that's why one of the things we thought about, or you thought about as a commission, was having shellfish consider, is that a problem with the shellfish beds?
Right.
And they're having small boats with retractable center boards, dagger boards or something coming in and bumping the bottom as they come in. And I guess we haven't heard back, you haven't heard back from them.
We haven't heard back.
I thought they would to address, is that a worry that they're concerned about? or not?
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, obviously you would want confirmation from the Shellfish Commission on this, but we did talk about that and what was the driver of the original condition, and their concern was a gas or oil spill, that would really affect their beds. And so, that's why they were really interested, and they felt that they were covered by the berthing restriction and the way we were asking for it, that it banned anything with an engine. So if you were a motorboat, obviously, but also if you were an auxiliary powered sailing vessel, that's what they stressed that they did not want to see. So that's why they felt that they were comfortable with this. And then we talked about disturbances to the bed because, you know, hopefully you would. And if you were a sailboat owner, you would get a sense of when you had to pull up your dagger board, when you had to pull up your centerboard. But if that did happen, you know, inevitably somebody would leave it down and would hit along the bottom. What the commission felt was that was not a type of disturbance that they were concerned about. One, this dock is not in a location where they stock. And two, for its inherent nature, the bed is to be disturbed. I mean, people go out there with clam rakes and they disturb the bed. And so that happens regularly. And so somebody with a sailboat going in and hitting with their dagger board wasn't something that they were concerned about. I think what maybe I should do is, or if the commission wants to do it, is ask John to opine, because obviously I'm not the Shellfish Commission, opine on that. But that was specifically discussed with, again, the main concern being oil and gas spillage and preventing that. But two, that it's okay if somebody happened to leave a dagger board and hit the bottom.
So where we are now is that you are going to submit different language to them?
Well, I basically just submitted back to John the language that we had originally sent and so he was going to review that and say whether he felt that is. But then I think maybe I should add to that email is if he comments on those two issues as well.
Okay, so basically we're still waiting to hear from the Shellfish Commission.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Super. Questions from anybody,
That's
commissioners?
perfect. Thank you.
Sorry to,
No.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
glad to provide the update and hopefully John will get back soon and then we'll.
Yeah, super. Okay, thank you. Sand management, Mr. Stedman, have we had any new communication with the Army Corps of Engineers?
you know, one of our issues now is the placement of sand that would be dredged from the sand spit. And DEEP is still asking the Corps to pursue placing the sand on a beach. And in response to that,
Before you go, John, they call sand management dredging the channel.
Okay.
That's sand management.
Oh, sorry, good interpretation, yes, yes,
You know
thank
what
you.
we're talking about.
Well, this
And please, John, if there's any, we have a lot of code here, so, knock on the table or let us know.
Fair to say, this is the sand management part of the dredging project. So DEEP is still pushing to have the sand be placed on the beach, and we discussed this with the engineering department, and the survey department in the engineering department did a survey of Sasko Hill Beach. And interestingly, the town has a plan for engineered beach. What is the desired profile of the beach? And apparently has some status with DEEP. But the existing sand on the beach is higher than the desired engineered profile of the beach. So we can document, based on an on-site survey, that the Sasko Hill Beach doesn't need any more sand. And then I went to the beach and took photographs to include with that, to send to the Corps. So now we're waiting to hear about hopefully a meeting scheduled with DEEP on site to make clear that we don't have a feasible beach to place the sand.
Excellent.
So we're waiting to hear back from the Corps of Engineers on
Okay.
that.
Any questions about that for Mr. Stedman? Okay, there was no mooring committee meeting this month, so, and Mr. Hirschler is unfortunately not able to be with us tonight.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
But the Corps did say that their real estate department is working on the necessary communications with the country club to obtain an easement over the property.
Oh, good.
To bring equipment through their property or across their property.
Good.
And interestingly, when I went down to Sasko Beach, in the past, when the town had rented equipment, it came from Sasko Beach and along the country club beach. But now, over by Sasko Beach, there's all beach grass that's grown. There's no clear, open path to bring equipment down without removing sand and dune plants. So I'm wondering if that's a further restriction on being able to work. But anyway, I'll ask about that.
We'll find out.
Yeah, but there's no clear pathway for now, equipment to go from the Sasko Beach parking lot along that beach to the
Very
country club.
interesting.
Point, right, it's reject.
It's all quite well vegetated with dune grass and, pardon me?
Any questions for Mr. Stedman about dredging, sand management?
The harbor master wants to know if there are any piping plovers in the vicinity.
Oh,
of that.
please, we have.
Observe any.
They're in the grass.
In the grass, they're hiding out in the grass.
Hiding in the grass by Sasko now. We know where the sand came from, but we can't.
Lower Wharf Risk Assessment. Eric, are you still with us?
Yes, Kim, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead when you...
All right, great. Hello, everyone. Well, Sam's in London, and he had had a few conversations with Peter Ritchie today. Since March, we've been trying hard to get some answers in order to present to the commission, and it's not been an easy process as far as getting all the information to us. However, the bare minimum that I can share is that the electrical box that was at Lower Wharf that was sticking up out of the lawn, apparently that has been disconnected and removed sometime, at least, I don't know the date of when that happened, but it was at least a week or two ago. Okay. So that now there's no power out there. So if anyone is using PA equipment for Blessing of the Fleet, take note. There is no power for that. You probably need a generator or a car battery to do that now. But there's no power. So if you're going to, I think in the past, like the firemen had their tent up and using any kind of electricity for cooking, heating, etc. It's not there anymore. So they took that down as a safety issue. And we do not know at this time if a safer electrical source will be replaced or not. So we don't know that.
Okay.
You know, there's a whole bunch of questions that we still are waiting answers for, regarding things like there's a sprinkler system there. We have no idea yet as to any answers for that. Signage, again, we are unclear as to what's happening with that. However, I think maybe it might be a good idea to kind of review some rules for Lower Wharf that we could make a recommendation to have maybe near an entrance to Lower Wharf to alert people as to the rules of Lower Wharf. But again, we have such limited information coming back here on our report that it's not even, I don't even really know what to discuss here other than we've been trying so hard to get in touch with Mr. Ritchie and having a detailed report, and it's we're not having any luck as far as getting it to the commission at this time.
Well,
but we'll
Eric,
keep trying.
Well, I think so far you guys have, I mean, I think he's probably not told you that he's called the harbor master, that he's talked with the town engineer. Both of those things I just learned tonight too. So I guess he's still working to gather information.
Yeah, Eric, he called me yesterday after the afternoon. He termed it an introductory phone call to let me know that since I had an interest in signs in Yee Yacht Yard and the Lower Wharf, that he was working on some signage. And I said, is there anything, we have a commission meeting this afternoon. Is there anything you needed to present to Eric or to anyone here? And he said, not yet. He's just, not quite yet. He's working on it, just to let me know that. And I told him I would report here that he's going to come up with a sign proposal of some type.
I think he probably has I'm just speculating. There may be many different puzzles that he's working with before he can actually present a comprehensive plan or a report. And I think there's other departments that he's got to consider. So I think without any knowledge with him, maybe he doesn't have what he needs at this time. But he's a very, very nice guy. We walked Lower Wharf in detail with him, covered every inch back in I think it was March, might have been a little earlier, and reviewed some premature signage ideas, and also with the knowledge that whatever is proposed before they're made should be at least reviewed by, I'm sure it has to be reviewed by Historic District Commission, number one, but also we probably want to review before anything is created so that we can offer any suggestions and any additions to whatever it is that they would recommend as far as it relating to any rules that we might want to address on a sign of some kind somewhere that's readily viewable if you walk in, that is appropriate.
Don, do you have a question for Eric?
A couple of questions. Just to clarify, is Mr. Ritchie, is that the risk manager? Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, he's Assistant Director of Human Resources for Town of Fairfield, Mr. Ritchie.
And he also is risk manager. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And does this relate, this issue of rules, is this also tied into the new business thing,
No.
or that's a separate discussion?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Madam Chairwoman, do you think that's a different discussion that we should have at some point?
Actually, I don't know, Eric. I mean, I don't know what rules Mr. Ritchie, is considering.
Yeah, because there's...
I could tell you, I could shed some light. I didn't realize when he brought up to me, he made some comment about the different rules and regulations. And I said, well, there's a town ordinance about that, because I mentioned swimming. I said, well, swimming is something people have to know they can't do, just as we've posted that in other places like Lake Mohegan after the drowning in various properties. I said, there's no swimming there. And he says, what's the source of that? I said, the ordinance.
The town code.
And the code, and the town code, the town ordinance. And he wasn't aware of that. So I told him, I think it's chapter 24. I gave him the link to all the stuff that's already prohibited for him to have an understanding as to what, we don't need new law here. This stuff is all in the books already.
Right.
And so he said he was going to look at that. He wasn't aware of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think Parks and Rec has their own. I think there is, yes, in the town code. Even South Benson Marina, I think, even has its own, right? Or so there, it may be something that is we take a look at what the common denominators are, but specific to that location, and since we're managing it, we determine what's important to highlight, right? So I know he's looking. I'm told he's looking at the deed, and again, there's certain areas I think I can only speculate that there would be, from a liability standpoint, you'd want to have signage, like you said, no swimming, no diving, for dog walkers that are going across the rocks to get to the beach. I mean, there's some language that needs to be created on a sign that's to be put somewhere, warning people of, the rocks and you could be injured, etc., all to cover liability. So, again, is it one sign? Is it a sign at each location? Is it a sign as you walk in? These are things, since we manage this area, we should have an input before I think things just pop up where unannounced.
Absolutely.
May I make one more?
Sure, Tom.
I regularly walk around the Pine Creek Marsh area, and as you enter that area, there's a very clear sign about rules for dog walking and dog control and so forth, and it's a very clear sign. And we have similar signs elsewhere in town in open space areas, because all over North America, dog-human interaction is a big issue in open space areas, and always will be. So I think, I don't know if Mr. Ritchie is looking at that aspect of things, dogs, or other things.
I don't think so. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. And when it comes to signage, I think we have the right to determine what is the signs after what's proposed to us. These are going to. The way I understand this is it's a report with proposal, and I think we are the ones that need to take a look at what is recommended and how we proceed. How do we move on from there? That's the way I interpret this.
Right, and I think you're right, Eric. So until we get his report, we really don't know what he's recommending.
Yeah. So, but
his objectives.
Right.
But yes, to clarify any type of presence of dogs. I mean, we would need to create language that the commission finds that is appropriate. I would suppose as part of whatever the list of be careful, etc. No swimming.
Right. Well, I think if we jump ahead to new business and rules for Lower Wharf. After our last meeting, Betty and Jack and Jeff identified some rules that already exist for the Recreation Department open spaces, for the Conservation Department open spaces, and the town code. So I think, and I'd like some volunteers to take a look at those three documents and just identify in those rules what would be appropriate for our Lower Wharf, just to get us started. I think that it's Okay. Is that you, Brian? I think it was Brian getting in the screen.
I'm just muting myself.
Okay, thank you. But I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And the first step, it seems to me, would be to identify, I mean, we all have safety concerns about things going on down there, and I think Mr. Ritchie probably his report will probably identify some of those too. But in terms of the dog walking and just sort of human behavior, again, I don't think we have to identify, create new, at least not at this stage, but I think it's important for us to begin to take a look at what the rec department does and what the conservation does with their open spaces, so that we can, when contacted by the first select woman, as we have been at least twice in the last 2 years, with questions about what our rules are down there, that we at least have an answer that makes sense, and instead of saying, I don't know, and we don't have any. So,
if I may, I took a photograph of the sign that was quite clear and helpful at Pine Creek Marsh, and I'd be happy to just share it with everyone.
Yeah, well, that would be good too. Yeah.
Just as a.
But I don't think I want the full commission to begin to sit down and look at these documents and come up with some rules. I think it's appropriate for committee work, and I think it can move along pretty quickly. And Eric, I don't know if you're interested. Sam's not here, but I don't know if he's interested. You guys are down there all the time. Don, is it something you're interested? Yeah. Okay, Don?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm sure Sam would too. I'll speak for him. He's always.
Okay.
But I do think that, before anybody jumps the gun and starts getting signs made, and before we go down there and they're already up or something, I mean, we need to we need to be the ones who determine, based
Absolutely.
on the report, based on their recommendations, then we can decide how do we go from here. What are these issues? And also, who's going to create these, and what's the look and feel, and how high are they off the ground, and where exactly is this, and so that when it does get presented to Historic District Commission, everybody's on board and no one's in shock. And so
right.
I just would hope that these are not created quickly, automatically, behind the scenes, and then they're placed.
No.
there.
I would ask the committee to get together to review the Recreation Department, the Conservation Department, the South Pine Creek Marsh, the town code, decide and prioritize the rules for safety issues as well as behavioral issues, and then report back to the commission. And nothing gets done until we okay.
All right,
Jeff?
so I guess
there would also need to be a public hearing to adopt the rules. Assuming it would follow the same procedure now as you're.
Only if there are new rules.
But there would be new rules. Because the rules for the Conservation Commission, those apply to the areas that the Conservation Commission has specific responsibility for. They don't have authority over the lower wharf. So this would be a new set of, same with Parks and Rec. You could borrow what they do, but it would still be unique to this property and would have to be adopted by this commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just,
so we can have
just so you. Hey, Madam Chairman, it's Brian. If you look at that section of the code, I know it talks about the areas within your jurisdiction having those restrictions like swimming, within the inner harbor. So it addresses, it is specific to Southport Harbor.
Right.
So you may find that you don't need any additional rules at this time. And Mr. Ritchie's purpose of calling me was he's essentially going down as we've suggested, and that is not to just put something up, but to let us know something's coming, not quite ready yet for your review and discussion, and rather than him just putting signs up. He's just reaching out to people that have an interest to make sure they're all on board as to what he wants to do, or what he's proposing as risk manager before they get put up, to avoid a problem. So.
Brian, it would be great if when you have his attention, if you invite him to our next meeting, because he's never, to the best of my knowledge, contacted any of us. And, I know Sam and Eric have been working hard, but, kind of where are we?
Yeah, I would just like to point out two things. I think if we're talking about dogs at Lower Wharf, we're talking about an issue that, it's only a slight exaggeration, that's the equivalent of
Oh, I know.
outlawing handguns in Montana or something like that.
I know.
It is a potentially very.
I get the sense we're really not focused on that. I think right now it's the risk assessment. The focus is the risk assessment of liability at Lower Wharf, which includes things like uneven grounds that from erosion that's at the seawall that is the lawn, where people can break an ankle. There's how to correct things that make it safer. What are you going to make people aware of to protect themselves as they're walking around, so to protect liability from the town? That's really all this is. We're not really focused on any kind of dog rules or of any kind here. This is not what that's about.
Right, and I think the committee should be focusing on what are other safety issues that maybe Mr. Ritchie hasn't picked up, and the behavioral stuff, the people's behaviors and that kind of thing.
I don't think, excuse me, but I don't think there's, the focus here is, we need a sign that says no alcohol, or, the focus here is about what is this exact property, what kind of liabilities could occur to the town if a person walks on it today. What do we need to pre-warn them of walking on this property like you would any other kind of property in town that is, that has signs up about, for whatever it is that they need to be concerned about. But, another thing is that also, last I saw, the pier, as we were talking about, has not been addressed by the DPW yet, as far as trying to at least close that off from people walking out to it via a plank or something. And
that's what
done at this time, obviously. So
yeah,
I don't know when that will be done and why it hasn't been done, but before you know it, there's going to be people trying to get out there fishing.
Right, and Jeff is going to talk to Bill Hurley tomorrow about that, and maybe get some input from the Department of Public Works about what we can do, take down the platform, if you will. But yeah, it's on everybody's mind.
I have a question for Jeff.
Go ahead, Betty.
If the property was acquired and there's a deed in place, it was acquired with these deed restrictions, and you have the town ordinance, you have open space, and I think when they accepted the property, it was, don't they define it as passive recreation? It's all set forth in there. And you're not making any additional restrictions. I don't know why we would need a public hearing if the Harbor Commission was only to just, even if it's just a statement or a declaration that the property, based on the current ordinances, the current town open space restrictions and the deed restrictions, this is what is consistent, and these are the rules.
I don't know.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. We have deed restrictions. The deed's declared undeveloped open space. We can only have 3 benches. We can't have any swimming by town code.
We just have to sort through it.
Yeah, we do.
What we want to do, and then whether we need, whether it's new, but we're also including in this the little beach area as well.
Right, that's new. You're right.
When Mr. Hurley said that the risk manager contacted him, he was also asking questions about the history of the acquisition of that area.
Yeah, I think we have to decide, based on what you're saying, do we need to have a hearing? And the other question is, would it be good to have a hearing?
Right.
Because I think there's, not only sometimes you have to, sometimes it's good to be transparent about things. Right.
But if you guys could just get together and begin to sort of figure out begin to, come up with some recommendations about what we want to do, I think that would be an important first step. As I said, the first select woman often gets complaints, and we need to have an answer.
Yeah,
That's not, we don't have any rules.
There's another part to the first selectman's referral to us of this. How big a problem are we talking about? How many people call her? You mentioned earlier twice that there's been referrals from her office.
Right, and I don't know. I don't know. I have no way of knowing.
Yeah, I think it's useful to understand. I go to lower office, to many of you perhaps, all the time, and I'm there at least twice a week for an hour at a time. And yes, there are times that there are events that are unpleasant or incorrect, whatever, but they're the exception.
Right. So I'm not suggesting we make rules where we don't need them. I'm simply saying that it seems to me that it's time that we take a look at, especially since we've acquired that additional piece of property. We take a look at what we've got, what the restrictions are, and we begin to kind of put to bed the idea that there are rules down there. What are they? And just then let everybody know what they are, and so that we know in our own minds what they are. Because it keeps coming up in a variety of different ways. It came up with somebody wanting a memorial bench down there. Remember? We can only have 3 benches. That's by deed restriction. So let's put it all out in the open, not just so that occasionally we get an email from Betty reminding us that these are the deed restrictions kind of thing. So, any other questions? Any other discussion? Rules for Lower Wharf or Mr. Ritchie's work at the Lower Wharf? So we're going to hop back up, to old business, Cohen v. Deep. Any update, Jeff? Any work? The legislative session is almost done.
After the Environment Committee determined not to move the bill that we supported forward, the mayor of New London and the state representative from Stamford contacted the DEP commissioner and the DEP director and asked if they could talk with them to try to make clear that the purpose of the legislation was not to usurp, or is not to usurp, state authority, but to clarify Harbor Management Commission authority. 2 weeks ago, as a result of that, there was a meeting involving 5 people from DEEP, including 2 attorneys, with people from Stamford and some other harbor management representatives. And it was actually a good meeting, if they were being straightforward with us, because they said, thank you for discussing, this, and we will get back to you. And that maybe there's an opportunity to do something this legislative session. However, in the last 2 weeks, they haven't responded. And so as a result, the person from Norwalk communicated and didn't get a response back, and the Stamford representative wrote a very forceful email saying, what have you been doing since our meeting? So we don't know what the status is right now of a legislative change.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, is there any public comment?
Might I make a comment?
Jeff, go ahead.
Might be of interest to everybody. Yesterday I went to a meeting in Stamford at the Sound Waters building, which is an environmental education organization. And it had to do with teaching climate change science in schools, public schools. And the superintendent of Stamford schools was there, a state legislator was there, a couple of teachers, and someone from Sound Waters. And there were quite a few people there. And they said that Connecticut is either the only state in the country or one of the very few that has mandated the teaching of climate science in public schools. And so now the question is how to develop the proper curriculum for doing it. It was quite interesting. I mean, they didn't talk about the specifics of the curriculum, but they did talk about the importance of having not just classroom learning, but out in the field learning. And that's how Sound Waters was coming into providing a service or educational service, so that what's learned in the classroom can be experienced and this is with respect to the marine environment. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was quite interesting. I wasn't aware of that particular bill, but of course the question is how do you teach that and how do you develop a program that applies, like Stanford has 13 or so elementary schools. And how do you develop a program in the elementary schools that's consistent with in each one of those schools? I thought it was interesting.
Very interesting.
But there's a relationship, of course, between climate issues and the marine environment, an obvious one. And that's how Sound Waters was involved with this.
Among other issues.
Among others,
Botany,
Yeah.
everything else.
Very interesting.
I just worry about that kind of legislation being for indoctrination. And because, whose version of the science gets taught?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
well, that's the key thing. Do you teach the science to be, objective, or does public policy follow the science, or does the science follow the public policy?
Absolutely.
Because I bet you anything, the legislature wants indoctrination, not objective science.
Right.
I hadn't been aware of that, and it said it took 3 legislative sessions to pass that.
Oh, wow.
I have to go back and look at it,
Yeah.
and see what it actually says.
Wow.
I work at Roxbury School, elementary school in Stanford, and what we do is we bring kids out on the vessels. And it's no indoctrination, it's just like, hey, here you are, here's some stuff we get out of the water. It's not very political at all, it's just getting out there and seeing, city kids getting out on the water and seeing what's out there pretty much.
Interesting.
It was pretty general.
Is that with in the Sound Waters?
Sound Waters, yeah, been out on their boat, yeah.
Their new facility at Bakusi Park is quite nice. I don't know if you've been.
I haven't been inside, no, really.
Yeah, so you go down there and take a look at it. It's
Yeah,
quite nice.
yeah.
Very cool.
Right. Well, thank you. Sorry to.
Sure. Any public comment? No public comment? Then can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Don moves. Doug, Eric?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thanks, Doug.
Yep, I hear you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, everybody,
Aye.
thank you. See you on June 20th is our next meeting.